Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the North American Bear Center. It is just about 12:30, which means it's time for our Bear Enrichment broadcast program. So for those of you here at the center today, we are broadcasting live from the observation deck and the viewing window area. So we do have Tasha, our 7-year-old female, down front right now getting her enrichment. If you're in the building and you want to see Tasha, head over to the windows or just to the right of the windows. There's a staircase that will lead you out into that observation. Now, Tasha here, again, our 7-year-old female, she's getting enrichment. Enrichment is just a challenge we give to the bears that they solve for a food reward. Our bears are captive bears, which means they don't have the same challenges as the wild bears do. In the wild, the bears are constantly being stimulated, having to go about their daily lives, finding food, finding shelter, avoiding predators, and taking care of their young, mating, all kinds of things. A lot of that doesn't happen here in the enclosure. So we have to make sure they're exercising their brains. We do that by giving them these challenges that they'll solve for food reward. So today's enrichment was a log that we've drilled holes in. Myself actually put a bunch of treats inside the log. There's a main hole in the middle, and then there's several other drilled holes. And then we put some dried nuts and fruits in there, and then cork the holes with a grape or two to keep the stuff in there. And you can see Tasha's going to start with those ones that are easiest on the top. But after she's finished with those, she'll go about manipulating the log to get the rest of the food out. Again, that causes that mental stimulation, and that's what the enrichment is designed to do. Now you can see Tasha's a little wet. She did go for a swim recently. That's actually the main ways the bears cool down. So if you haven't noticed yet, they are black, which means they can overheat quite easily in direct sunlight. So Tasha here does have some of her new winter coat coming in. So as you can see, she's pretty thick. So if they stay out in this on a hot day like today in direct sunlight, we've recorded the tips of their hairs getting in excess of 185 degrees. Now they can't sweat like you or I can. They have to cool down, releasing air through their feet. So an easy way to do that or expedite the process is to go in the water. Their coat is actually specially designed to trap water in the spaces between the fur, and that allows it to sit on Tasha. So you can see she's kind of sparkling on her lower half. That's actually going to continue to cool her down for a longer period of time. They'll still shake when they get out of the water like a dog, but a lot of that water gets trapped tightly close to her body. So again, it'll continue to cool her down. That's why the pond feature and the individual bathtubs in the bears' enclosures are so important. We want them to be able to cool down when they need to, and that's what those things are designed to do. Now, the main hole in the enrichment log there is corked with 2 apples. So I made it a little bit more difficult for Tasha to get those ones out, and there's a little bit more food in that middle part. So we'll see. They're green apples, so we'll see if she gets one out. It looks like she got one out. Now she's going to have to get the thing to tip upside down to get all the food out of there. There's still an apple in the other end, so she can't tip it that way. So we'll see how Tasha solves this problem. Now, bears are incredibly intelligent. They have a very high brain to body size ratio. That is how we get the rough estimate of how intelligent an animal is. Doesn't necessarily mean if your brain to body size ratio is the highest that you are the smartest animal alive, because that's not exactly how it works. But generally speaking, a good rule of thumb is that the higher that ratio is, the more intelligent those animals tend to be. Bears do have a rather high brain to body size ratio, which means they are pretty intelligent. They actually have really good long-term memories as well, some of the best in the animal kingdom. Bears are very, very good at memorizing areas when it relates to food. So all it takes is feeding a bear one time in one location. It will never forget for the rest of its life. They've actually been recorded making mental maps and going on excursions of over 120 miles in a specific direction to find food that they may have once had, or they just smelt on a high wind that was passing through. Because of their intelligence, this makes them somewhat of issues for humans occasionally. Bears are not only smart, but they're also incredibly strong. So if a bear can't problem solve its way to getting its food reward or whatever it's trying to do, the next is to start to smash. And they are incredibly strong. So, wooden structures, it's no problem for a bear to rip apart. That's why we have electric fencing. So that's what this is right here in front of me. It's going to keep me safe from the bears. The bears do know what it is. And they just know better than to touch it because, again, they learn fast. They aren't smart. But that's why trash can bears or bird feeder bears are all common in this area. If you put things like that out and don't secure them, so your trash, for example, if you put it out for the whole week and you're not securing it, you're more than likely inviting bears into your yard, as well as bird feeding in this area. We are in the heart of bear country, and bears are very good at cost-benefit analysis. So a bird feeder in a trash can is a lot more valuable to them sometimes when we have those harder food years because there's a lot of food in one area, and it's very easy to get. Now, again, with that cost-benefit analysis, they have an active period in this area of about 5 months. Now, one of those months is mating season, so they're not really caring about food. That means 4 months out of the year, is all you have to eat all the food you need on a calendar year. So efficiency is the name of the game. They spend spring, summer, and fall building up their fat layer, and that's what they survive on through their whole winter dormancy for about 7 months in this area. That means, again, efficiency is key. So as you start building that through the summer, you're going to also want to waste as little energy as possible. That's one of the reasons we won't see the bears go after the chipmunk. So you see that chipmunk is getting pretty close to Tosh, and a lot of people are like, oh, why doesn't she eat it? Well, that's not a very cost-effective way of getting your food. Two reasons for that, mainly with the chipmunk. Look at that chipmunk go. It's quick, right? I don't know if any of you ever tried to chase a chipmunk down. They're not the slowest animals. They're pretty tough. Now, Tasha, she's a little bigger than most of us, weighing in, I can't give out exact weight, so I'll say she's between 200 and 400 pounds or something like that at the moment. Can you imagine all that weight with a black winter coat on chasing around a chipmunk? That's a ton of energy. And all right, let's say she catches it. If you take away the fur and the bones, because there's not a whole lot of nutritional value in the furs and the bones of an animal, and all that's left is the meat and the other internal organs, that's about a half a mouthful at best for Tasha. That's not going to give her the energy back she just expended trying to catch the thing. Now, that being said, I've worked here for about 4.5 years now, and I'd be lying to you if I said that we haven't had a few chipmunk and squirrel fatalities over the years. Sometimes we'll give a big pile of peanuts to the bears, or nuts or other food that they like as well, and one of those dumber or braver chipmunks will approach the pile and steal from the bears. They do not take too kindly to being stolen from. So when that happens, especially the female bears, sometimes they are quick to reach out and squish them, much like a human squishes a mosquito. It's a bear versus chipmunk. It's not really a fair fight. And then we get left with this dead pancake chipmunk. Now, again, I've worked here for 4.5 years, and I've never seen one of the bears actually eat the chipmunk. They just take the peanut back that it stole. So it's a food defense behavior. They're not interested in eating it. Meat is a very low preferred food item for the black bears. In fact, well-fed black bears typically won't eat meat. We don't feed any meat to the bears here at the center. They all do get a raw chicken egg in the morning as part of their breakfast. Whether that's meat or not, I'll let you be the judge. But beyond that, only one of our bears gets any other type of meat, and it's only because we need to trick him into taking his medication that he will not take willingly. And we use tuna fish to do that. So typically, again, they're not going to eat meat if they're well fed. Now, make no mistake, a hungry wild black bear, when it's hungry, they will take advantage of just about anything they can get their paws on, and that does include other animals. But in the wild, 90% of their diet is made up of vegetation, mostly nuts and berries, but a good amount of green vegetation as well. Which means that only leaves 10% for animal protein or other animals. Now, if 10% of their diet is made out of other animals, the biggest chunk of that 10% is actually insects. All right, so other furry animals that run around like these chipmunks doesn't make up hardly any of their diet. But as you move out into different parts of the country, you may see that fluctuate slightly. But again, on average, black bears will be eating majority vegetation. Even a brown bear may have an upwards of 70% of its diet made up of vegetation. All right, so bears, they're well adapted to eat both. In fact, the polar bear is the only completely carnivorous bear species on the planet. Most other bears do rely more heavily on other food items rather than the meat. And that's not to say they don't possess the necessary strength and power and speed, for that matter, to get after a human or something like that. But a bear attack by a black bear is extremely rare, and it doesn't happen very often. They say the leanest of bears can run about 30 to 35 miles per hour. Our bears here are well fed, so I can say with utmost confidence, none of our bears will be making it to 30 miles per hour. They're all a little bit on the chunkier side of things. So you can see we do have lots of other wildlife here in the enclosure. There's a gray jay sitting over here, or actually it's been renamed to the Canada jay. They're very quick birds. They can carry actually really large loads of food back and forth. And right next to it, actually, we just had a blue jay land. Jays, they're in the same family. They're very similar, but not necessarily the same. We get both of them. The blue jays are actually probably starting their migration south. The gray jays will stay here all winter long. So Tasha has moved on. She's determined that there's nothing good left in that log. Again, all of our bears do have a preferred list of foods. Roasted peanuts happens to be one of their least favorite foods that we feed. So if you're seeing some scattered food around on the ground, most likely the roasted peanuts. That's what some of these other animals are here for as well. They get a lot of that. So we have really big blue jays, squirrels, chipmunks here at the Bear Center because all the animals get fed really well. Now, even when the bears eat the food, sometimes the animals will go after it after they've eaten it. Bears have very short digestive tracts, which means when they go to the bathroom, there are often whole food items in their scat. Those chipmunks, as cute as they are, they have some dirty little secrets. They like to dig through the scat and pull out their first meal sometimes directly from our bear scat. So here at the Bear Center, that's whole peanuts. Out in the wild, though, when a bear's eating those berries or whatever it's going after, you will see whole blueberries, whole blackberries, whole raspberries sometimes in the scat, which makes it very easy to identify what the bears are eating at a given time of year if you can find a fresh scat. Now, again, for those chipmunks, secondarily, the bears provide food for them. So their main role in the ecosystem is actually to be a seed disperser. So because their digestive tract is so short and berries and nuts are just seeds for plants, when the bears go to the bathroom, bears aren't small animals, so when they go to the bathroom, it's a pretty big pile. There's quite literally sometimes thousands of seeds with a little pile of fertilizer to go along with it, which will eventually become more berry bushes and nut bushes for all the animals in the woods to enjoy. So their niche or their role is to keep the forest integrity or the forest composition intact. Now, secondarily, they do provide food to those rodents and some birds through their scats as well. So they are important out in the woods. They are kind of at the top of the food chain in terms of just they don't really have too many natural predators here in Minnesota. In fact, we don't really have hardly any natural predators for them here in Minnesota besides wolf, but that's pretty rare. Wolves don't prey typically on adult bears. Wolves are smarter than that. There's a lot more easier prey to get, and they have a whole pack to do it, so they'll often prefer to go after other things. But it has been recorded they can and sometimes will attack and kill black bears, but again, not necessarily common. Beyond that, humans are their only limiting factor here in Minnesota. You have to go back to the 1800s before you find another predator or a competitor of the black bear, and that was the brown bear, but we extirpated them from the state back in the early 1800s. We no longer have any brown bears here. However, you can find a black bear that is colored brown. So when they first named the bears, they didn't understand that, but black bears can actually come in a variety of different colors, including brown, cinnamon. They can even be grizzled like a grizzly bear. They can be black, obviously. They can also be white, blonde, and a gray and a grayish blue as well. And the white actually is an albino. Just about any animal can be albino. But black bears can not only be albino, but they can also just be separately white. So they do come in almost more color varieties than any other animal here in North America besides the wolf. The wolf does have slightly more options that it can look like, but the bear would be second in that. So they do have a range of pelage colors. Here in Minnesota, we tend to only see about 95% of our population being black, which means 5% has some kind of color variation. Almost always that color variation is brown of some sort. We don't see a whole lot of mix here. There's a reason for it. If you take a look at our enclosure, it's a pretty decent representation of what you might see if you're out walking in the woods. All right, there's a lot of shadowy dark spots in the enclosure where being black would help you blend in or hide. Now, as you move out west, these forests aren't as dense. They're much more wide open, and there's a lot more brown space where brown would benefit you more. So as you move west, you'll see that sometimes some of those states out west may have upwards of 30% or more of their population of black bears not being black. They might be brown because, again, that benefits them more in those more open forest systems and those Rocky Mountains where, again, there's a lot of brown coloration where that would help you more to blend in rather than the black where it would make you stick out. Also, because it's more open, there's more sunlight. And again, I mentioned how easy it is for the black bears to overheat. So brown is slightly better in the sun than a dark black because, again, black's going to absorb the most heat. So it also benefits them in that way for thermal regulation. Tasha's just finishing up the little spread below the windows, below the deck. So for those of you that are at the windows, you're getting a really up-close view of Tasha. And I'll just remind everybody, just in case someone came in partway through, you are able to come outside on the observation deck above the windows. There is a staircase just to the right that will lead you outside and above them. This does offer the best spot at our facility to take pictures of the bears because when they're not under the deck, there is no physical barrier between you, so you can get nice shots without a fence or a window in your way. Now, it looks like Tasha's cleaned up most of what she wants. She's still cruising around looking for some more food. There is some in that log pile she's looking at, and she's trying to figure out how she's going to go about getting them out of there. So we do stack a lot of different log piles and hide food in them. And so, again, simulating that natural foraging behavior and causing them to have to think. So you can see she's going to reach into that one to try and get the stuff out. That didn't work very well. Tasha, you're probably going to have to knock the pile over, which I know you don't like to do. But that's probably the best way to get that stuff out. So we have thrown a bunch of nuts in that hollow log there. She got some out with that first paw scrape, but I think she'll have to manipulate the thing a little more, or she might just stick her head in there. Another adaptation the bears have for efficient feeding is their long and sticky tongue. So the female bears may have something like a 6 to 8 inch long tongue, but the adult male bears can get up to about a foot long, and they can stick it out, and their food items will stick to it. So in cases like the enrichment log or the log she's working on, instead of having to reach in with your paw and scrape food out one piece at a time, she can stick her tongue in there, whirl it around, all the food items will stick to it, and she'll pull it back in. Again, very efficient way of feeding. The bears don't want to expend energy when they don't have to. Your mouth, including humans' mouths, are specially adapted. They don't fatigue the rest of the way our body does. So your mouth muscles are really important for eating and breathing. If you couldn't do those things, or we fatigued and were unable to do them, that would obviously not be conducive to living. So just about every animal especially adapted mouth, tongue, and lips, but the bears have taken this to the next level. A lot of it is focused on feeding as efficiently as possible. So they will typically avoid using those paws when they can. So let's compare that to humans. Let's say we go out berry picking. We're going to go out and we're going to use our hands. At some point, if you pick berries all day long, you're going to get tired. But you're not going to get tired of breathing because, again, you're set up not to, because that would not be helpful for being alive. I can actually give experience on that matter. I give tours at the facility here all day long, and I still have plenty of stuff to tell my wife when I get home, and she could vouch for that. So, again, you just don't tire the same way in that area. Now, she has gone back to the other log. She must have realized there's some better food items in there, and now she's going about pulling them out as well. Notice the apple she still hasn't eaten. Apples are also pretty low on the preferred list of foods. You might hear stories of bears coming into towns to eat apple trees. Those are typically wild bears, and again, that's a good food source for a wild bear. But the other foods that we feed the bears have much better caloric value and much better nutritional value, so they typically prefer those things. So I'm going to show you folks how we weigh the bears. So this is our bear scale right here. I can just throw a little handful of nuts in there for Tasha here. She's pretty cautious of it. She doesn't like the scale. You can see she's very, very slow when she goes up there. But boom, now she's up. And we have a scale under this box with that trough there to get the food, and there's a readout inside. It's really important that the readout's inside. The bears gain and lose about a fifth of their body weight on a yearly basis. That's how much they'll lose through that winter dormancy. So we don't want them getting self-conscious with all that massive weight loss and gain, so we have the readout inside so they can't see it. We don't want to shame any of the bears here. And as I mentioned before, our bears are a little bit bigger than what you'd expect to see in the wild. So Tasha's a little bit bigger than what you would say your average female is, even though she's only 7. They are captively cared for, and captive bears do tend to get much larger than their wild counterparts because they have health care. And they don't have to go through the hardships those wild bears do. Also, we don't want to have sickly bears here, so obviously we're going to keep care of them. But, those wild bears, they might have hard food years from time to time. They might have to compete with other animals for food. They might have to compete with other bears for food. They might have a hunting season to go through, like here in Minnesota. Obviously, our bears here in captivity don't have any of those hardships, so they get a little bit big. I'm going to take a brief pause and see if anybody has any questions out here on the observation deck that they'd like to ask Tasha. Anybody have any questions? Do bears eat honey? That's a fantastic question. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but I'm sure you've heard that from Winnie the Pooh, right? They're kind of a bit of a liar. They're actually the only bear that likes honey. So we actually did a taste test with wild bears. What they're going in the hive for is the baby bees. All right, so this far north, we don't have colony nesting honeybees. We do have hornets, though, and they'll make a huge nest in a tree. It looks like a gray paper-mache basketball. There's no honey in there. Hornets don't make honey. They're twice the size of a honeybee, and they can sting you repeatedly without dying. We regularly see our bears here in captivity and the wild ones go raid those hives, and it's because, again, they're looking for the larvae stage. They're really easily digestible, and they're very high in protein as well as other nutrients, and there's a huge colony, so it's a really, really good meal. They'll also do this with ant brood and larvae as well. But that's why, so once upon a time, a farmer who farmed honey with his honeybee saw a bear go into his hive. And usually if you're a farmer and you have an issue with an animal, so let's say you're farming food, you have problems with like rodents coming stealing your grain and your food that you're going to sell. If you farm livestock, you have problems with larger predators coming and attacking and eating your livestock. So they just assumed, the bears are after the thing I'm farming, which is the honey. And then fast forward to today, we figured out, no, that's actually not what they're looking for. A good way to explain it is you go to a nice steakhouse, right? You get a steak. You don't need steak sauce for it, right? But some people like steak sauce. That's kind of like what the bears are going for. They're going in there for the steak, which is those baby bees. If the honey's there, sure, they might eat it, but they also might not. And this is where the taste test came in with wild bears. We used a muffin tray. We filled up each row, the 3 rows, with something different. We did pecans and honey. The first wasn't our captive bears. The first wild bear came up. It ate the pecans. It ate the berries. It sniffed the honey and then walked away. Didn't want anything to do with it. All right. The second bear came up. First, while it was eating the pecans, it dropped one into the honey. Now, honey's sticky, as we all know, but bears are fairly dexterous. They can actually coordinate a task with the single use of a claw. All right, so it sat, tried to scoop the pecan out of the honey. After about a minute of this, it got very frustrated because it was very sticky and it couldn't get it. So it smashed the muffin tin, threw it in the woods, and took off. All right, so we had to go buy a new muffin tin to test the third bear. The third bear did eat all 3 items, but it ate the honey last. All right, out of 3 bears, only 1 ate the honey. that bear only ate it last, which just moreover proved that black bears, given the opportunity, will eat just about anything. Because again, a hungry black bear will eat just about anything. But honey isn't what they're motivated to go into that hive for. Will they eat it? Yeah, sure. Again, hungry bears will eat anything. But are they looking for it in the wild? No. And actually, most parts of their range, they won't be able to find it. Honeybees don't exist everywhere here in the United States where the black bears do. There's actually only certain parts of their range where they'll cross ranges and both exist together. Any other questions for the bears? Do they run pretty fast? They say that the leanest of bears can get to 30 to 35 miles per hour. I know for a fact none of our bears are getting that fast. They're a little bit on the heavier side of things, so they're not running that fast here in the enclosure. But we do regularly chase each other around and stuff. In fact, Tasha here and our other female Holly regularly chase each other around the enclosure. And at first glance, you're like, oh, poor Tasha, she's constantly just getting chased. But we'll see it where they'll run by here, the viewing area, and Tasha is much faster. She'll get ahead of Holly, and Holly will stop right here, and you'll literally see Tasha back up, like, oh, I'm not done yet. I still want to be chased. So she kind of antagonizes it quite a bit. Any other questions for Tosh or bears in general? How many bears do we have here at the Bear Center? We have 4 black bears. We do have a license through the USDA and the Minnesota DNR, so federal, state government, and we can house 11 here legally. We would never put 11 in this particular enclosure. We do have 5 of those private enclosures that the tour will take you to go see. So I'd say that would be our maximum capacity. But since we only have the 4, we're definitely not advertising anything at the moment or anything like that. Alrighty, folks, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the broadcast. Tasha seems to think it's over as she's heading out. I will encourage you to watch for a little bit. She will probably make a pass to the right through that nice little wildflower patch, which will also offer an opportunity for some really good pictures. You could probably convince your friends that it was a wild bear. She gets back there because you won't see any of the man-made stuff. So if she take a right after she goes up that hill, again, she'll be entering that nice patch of flowers back there. Really good photo. I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping it up. I first and foremost just want to thank everybody for coming out today. Thanks for being willing to spend some of your time and money with us here at the Bear Center. All of you had to pay an admission price today to be here, and we are a nonprofit, so we're very appreciative of that. All that goes right back into care and teaching people about them. If you didn't want to be here today to see and learn about the bears, we probably wouldn't be here to show you and teach you. So we do appreciate you being willing to spend that time and money with us. If you're interested in similar things, well, you're going to love the International Wolf Center. It's located on the other end of Ely. You will not see bears there, but you will more than likely see some wolves. They teach about wolves in the same way we teach about bears. I highly recommend you go check them out. There's a few other nice attractions in town as well, including the Dorothy Moulter Museum and the Ely History Museum. Both really, really awesome facilities. Go check them out if you have the time and the means. With that, I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to thank those of the people in online too. So we do broadcast this program live on our website for free every day that we do it. You can go to bear.org to watch. So there is probably a bunch of people tuning in online for supporting us from far and away. We appreciate you as well. And for those of you here today, if you ever do want to check up on the bears, feel free to visit us at bear.org. Those cams are free and they are live 24/7. There's the main cam down here. Ted has his own cam, and a few of the other bears have their own cams as well. So you can usually always see at least what one of the bears is up to at any given time. I will warn you, if you back in the winter, it's not going to be very entertaining. Our bears go dormant in the wintertime, so you won't see a whole lot. But through the summer, again, if you're ever just missing the bears, feel free to check us out online. Well, thanks everybody for coming out. Again, my name is Spencer. Happy to be doing these broadcasts every day at 12:30, and we will see you tomorrow for our next live broadcast at 12:30. For the next BTS tour, or the behind-the-scenes tour, it'll be going out at the top of the hour, which is at about 8 minutes, and we'll meet in the viewing window area on the bleacher-style seating, and we'll head out at the top of the hour. Thanks again, everybody, and we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.